Ce sujet est très douloureux et très profond et qui touche à tout le monde, des femmes, surtout les femmes.
从他们的脸上可以感觉得到他们的痛苦。
The first starts off tentatively, just with slicing into the plum a series of little slice marks which just expose the inner flesh, like wounds.
It's very pragmatic, straightforward, hardcore, brutal stitching.
The more we look into it, the more we realize the real history is never been told.
Yes, it is a very difficult subject. The history can be so subjective.
If you read about these situations, if you read the statistics, you can become numb. It's just so horrendous that part of you closes down.
Man is a violent creature, and the best we can do is try to learn how to be better, more civilized creatures. Art is something that speaks to a lot of people, and it tells a story for people, or it touches people.
If you do a condensed, a sharp enough image, it stays with people, it haunts them. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Before the terms of passion come into being, there's a necessity for everything. There's a necessity for art, as there's a necessity for poetry and for policemen in the street. We just opened to the public intimate transgressions, and it's getting a buzz.
We play around with different levels in the exhibition. There are some works hanging very high, some are on the ground. There's constantly something to look at, and it's giving you a new perspective. That is also the meaning of the exhibition. We're trying to give people new perspectives on this problem.
So it's a variegated show with participants from a number of countries around the world. The Far East, we have Japanese, Chinese, Serbia to Guatemala to Mexico. Intimate Transgressions has the versatility of bringing about an exhibition with 22 artists that bring 22 different points of view related to the ugly topic of sexual slavery of women under work conditions today.
Gao Yuan was the first artist on this project because she was already working around the area of the comfort women, and having the paper planes was a way we felt of giving a three-dimensionality to the photographic work. The Japanese planes that came in, that bombed, that caused such huge damage.
我做了100个纸飞机，然后是因为我们小的时候都会玩纸飞机嘛，然后为了这个展览的艺术，所以我想了这个纸飞机。然后我请，因为太多，我一个人做不完，所以我就请我爸爸妈妈还有我姐姐弟弟一起，然后折这些纸飞机。我觉得纸飞机是那个蛮有意思的，它象征又是我们小的时候，又象征就是它可以飞往全世界。然后我觉得，我为了纪念这次第2次世界大战的慰安妇。
Gail Ritchie is from Northern Ireland and for many years has addressed the issue of conflict in society and also the impact specifically on women of conflict in society. So Gail set up an installation using plums which she destroys. The plum itself, which was the symbol of, fertility and wealth and good fortune, being destroyed in the most terrible ways.
Well, I've made a piece called Little Acts of Cruelty, and it's based on a book of poems by Wing Tek Lum, which are very graphic poems about the violations visited upon mainly women during the Nanking Massacre. The first starts off tentatively, just with slicing into the plum a series of little slice marks which just expose the inner flesh like wounds. I pull those wounds apart and start to work my way through to the core of the plum, which is the plum stone. So I've made 15 images, which I overpainted with gouache. So at the top, print number 1, if you like, you start off with the complete plum, and by the time you work down to the 15th image, there's nothing that is recognizable as a plum, because through the series of acts that I did on the plum, by the last panel it has disappeared, and there's just a bullet and a noose left. I destroyed the plum. As many as the Comfort women were completely destroyed, physically and spiritually, by the actions that had been forced upon them.
And these are the stones of the plums that were eaten and destroyed. So it's the sort of seed of destruction. The artists are generally concerned with narrative. It's not about sort of just abstract formations, it's actually about what the backstory is.
This piece is called Schillinger and the Dancer. We have human hair, we have 3 moving images. One is on the wall, the other is on the floor, and the other is projected on a very small mattress that has a few little red spots on it that indicate blood, and those are the materials. It was known that the Nazis were not supposed to have sexual or other relations with Jews and Roma because they were considered animals. However, of course, humans are humans and things happened. And this particular story was of a young woman who was very beautiful and a dancer. And evidently, a Gestapo officer named Schillinger was with another officer at the time and pulled her out of line while she was on line to Auschwitz. And she very cleverly decided to do a striptease, and she started to take off her undergarments, and in her seduction, in her act of seduction, she was able to take their pistols, both pistols, and shoot them dead. And as the story goes, which of course makes sense, she was immediately shot dead herself.
Many of the artists engaged with that notion of process.
Here we've got a work by Niamh Cunningham, and she made this work out of her own hair.
Niamh's hair lock, which is so meticulously made, there is a recognition that the theme itself must cover periods of time, things being revisited over and over and over again.
She spent about 9 months making it and has said very interesting things about the importance of hair, its symbolic value for women, and how it is also indicative of health. So there are all these interesting sort of complex ideas running underneath using the image of the hair lock.
What I've done is I've tried to capture the emotional attachment between mothers and their sons. I'm not judging war, the aspects of war, or whether it's necessary or not. I'm just talking about the idea of sending your flesh and blood off to a place of conflict. Having to put on a happy face and being strong and supportive, even though your heart is breaking, is somewhat timeless. No matter how you feel inside, you have to chin up and stay calm, I guess. You can't really let your loved ones know how terrified you are.
Je conçus une installation spécialement pour cette exposition qui se compose par 3 sculptures, en fait qui représentent 3 fleurs, 3 orchidées. Et les orchidées, c'est le symbole de Taïwan, c'est la fleur de Taïwan. J'ai bien étudié le nombre de pétales, sa structure, pour pouvoir réaliser ma sculpture. Voilà, j'ai utilisé la peau d'agneau très souple qui est le symbole de sacrifice. Dans notre civilisation, les agneaux sont des faibles, sont prêts à sacrifier. Donc ça, c'est la deuxième signification, fleur de Taïwan sacrifiée.
Well, Songshin has made a photographic collage using universal icons of the male and the female. She does not say, oh, it's only women who've suffered. Everyone suffers. If the women in your culture suffer, everyone suffers because they are your mothers, your sisters, your wives, your daughters. So I would urge you to look very closely at those images. It's very traumatic having to collect and catalogue them and to actually make them into an artwork as well. It's a process that has many difficulties. And through here we've got a wonderful work by Xing Qing, who is an artist based in Beijing. She has a great reputation for working with fibers. And this particular artwork, she said, she made because of the intense loneliness that she experienced in her own life and reflecting what comfort women have experienced. All you have is the suitcase that you carry with you and this pillow and the remembrance of what has gone before. Elahi Masumi is Iranian, and she is making reference to the violence against women that exists in many, many Middle Eastern countries at the moment, and certainly with reference to ISIL. When she makes these heads and they hang in this way, she thinks about them as fruit hanging on a vine. She's making references to the grapes, to the olives that grow in the area, and how actually the women are reduced to nothing more than things you eat, things that you eat and destroy and spit out. So moving on, we've got Nermina Hammam, who is an Egyptian artist. When the Arab Spring came and the women were out protesting in the streets and demonstrating, and there was a great feeling of solidarity, within months that was changing. Within months, women were being told to cover their heads, to stay quiet, to go away. Those women who stayed were routinely sexually brutalized. And the situation for Egyptian women has really become a great deal worse in recent times.
The uniforms I'm presenting here, they represents sort of the male masculinity of parade and posturing and the pageantry and the pride of what it is to be a soldier. And obviously by modifying that, you know, my pieces, they're just questioning the structure in which the male is given that platform to do the posturing. Each uniform has been dissected and cut up and modified with webbing and canvas. So used sail-making sort of technology and sort of the stitching that you would more associate with parachutes and with safety equipment, sort of safety harnesses. Equally, there's just as much references to sort of women's dress with sort of corsetry and the understructure of larger sort of Georgian dresses and Victorian style clothing. So it's sort of a bit of a montage.
Well, I think it's very significant if you look at the level of sexual violence within the military in various democratic countries. If you look at America, if you look at France and the UK, every year there are increasing reports of sexual violence within the military itself.
Anvil is glass patterns, which is rape in the US military. The piece is right there with a totem of 5 grey Sony televisions, 1970s style museum quality, with the top being Obama, the head of the military. And underneath is Congress debating rape in the military. Why should we stop? Fundamental ethics, etc. And then 3 of the screens carry constantly different women soldiers, ex-soldiers, who speak about the rape in the military, the hyper-masculinity of it all.
We have a video projection overhead, and underneath that projected image is a US-issued military-grade cot, the kind you'd see any soldier using in Iraq or Afghanistan. And then with that is precariously suspended right next to it is a very long old rope tied in a noose, and inside the noose is a 2-liter vodka bottle, empty.
Regina told me instantly, La Verdad, the truth. La Verdad is an account, a true account of how rape is perpetrated in Guatemala with indigenous people, someone she's familiar with in her own family. And the narrative she tells us, stage 1 is clearly spoken. A dentist comes and shoots her Novocaine. You have been to the dentist. It's a metaphor, but it's a reality. You get numbed. You get numbed the moment they say, hey, come over here with us. You get more numb when they throw you down on the ground with a gun. We get more numb when they get on top of you. Every time she loses the ability to be clear, to speak, it's number and number and number. The first people that came to mind that would be perfect for this exhibition would be Regina José Galindo and Teresa Margolles. Like, absolutely, 1, 2, 3.
Me interesó mucho participar en esta colectiva por la temática. Y me interesaba porque podía darle un giro hacia la frontera sur de Estados Unidos. Trabajé la frontera entre Ciudad Juárez y El Paso. Los soldados, el trabajo sobre los soldados que pasaban a Ciudad Juárez viéndola como un espacio de placer. La exhibiría como una mujer en el suelo, una mujer que está en el suelo, desnuda, utilizada como un objeto, con un grupo de hombres bebiendo y viéndola. Y esos puntos de conflicto son la desaparición de cientos de mujeres que han sido asesinadas en esa ciudad.
I made a video installation for this exhibition. Basically, the video is projected from the ceiling towards the sunscreen on the floor. And on the screen, we can see the man and woman. Their facial expression and the gesture is gradually changing according to their feeling. The man, he is very serious in the beginning. But when he started to get the sexual desire, he's trying to hide the obscene grinning and trying to be serious. He finally get really excited and be crazy, making a spooky laughing. And on the other hand, woman in the video, when she started to remember her experience of sexual violence, she started to cry and finally she's really suffered from the trauma and like kind of screaming. I didn't want to say something. I just wanted to make the sound, but it's like coming from the heart. It's such a simple thing. Why we cannot solve this problem still now? So that's why I just wanted to focus on the really simple and then kind of universal aspect.
People are commodified. People are turned into things. You can do with them what you will. So I used packaging materials, which became a sort of prison-like environment for the dolls, which I used to represent the victims of sexual violence. And they are enclosed, they are trapped in these strange, surreal environments. I've made quotations from Hiroshiga, a wonderful Japanese artist, to demonstrate how a society can be very refined, have a wonderfully highly developed aesthetic, and yet, on a moral level, can descend into utter barbarity.
My name is Sam Chen. I come from Taiwan in 1966. This is my 49th year here. Few of our friends formed a contemporary Chinese history society. That's how we start to learn what's happening in the World War II. And the more we look into it, the more we realize the real history is never been told.
I was born in Taiwan, and when I was 15, I went to Japan as a high school student first year. When I first opened the so-called world history, it was merely stated that in 2 lines, that saying during the occupation of Nanjing, civilians were accidentally killed and didn't even mention the number of the victims. And that was the first time that I realized that the history can be so subjective.
Kung-Fu Woman issue has come up in 1980s, before no information about Kung-Fu Woman. It's only recently they're getting old and the society is more open. Some of them, at least, start to say, okay, we can talk about it. And now that they're willing to talk with only very few people, but that's enough to shock the world.
我去了山西，然后去拍一些照片，还有录像，总共有14位那个慰安妇在山西。那个时候我是跟着一个教授，他专门是研究慰安妇的。然后我们一个一个去采访，然后因为都是在一些很小的村子里面。当我第一次看到慰安妇的时候，我感觉心里很难过，对他们，因为他们是曾经遭过这种历史，受过很大的伤害，在他们的生命当中。他们现在都已经90多岁了，然后你从他们的脸上可以感觉得到他们的痛苦。
Gao Yuan come back with a picture. I go through all the pictures, go through all the videos she took it, and I just thinking we really have to do something about this. It's been 70 years now, okay? It could be wiped out. We should turn the page over. But since Japan doesn't want to admit it, this page cannot be turned over.
Well, I hope that Intimate Transgressions will wake people up to this dark history of Japan And not only comfort women, but many, many brutal acts of violence during World War II, which they failed to acknowledge, really. The fact that they don't acknowledge, they don't fail to apologize, because that's all these people want, really. We just some closure. Art is something that speaks to a lot of people, and it tells a story for people, it touches people. I think it's a good way to highlight horrors in our society and our history.
I think the wonderful thing about art is its transformative potential. I think Sam and Kevin have understood that, and their idea of sending a message to the world about how dangerous and how terrible sexual violence is at times of conflict in particular. They recognize that art is a way of really looking at the situation in a complex and human way which is appropriate for every culture in the globe. There is at the end of it a message of hope, because the message is speak out, you have done nothing wrong. The people who have done these bad things, the broken people, they are the ones we also need to look at. We need to examine what we as a society, what we as family members, what we as individuals can do to stop our other partners in the world becoming terrible perpetrators, becoming broken people who go out there and inflict damage on others for the most terrible of reasons.